Will the House please come to order and members kindly take their seats? Good morning. In lieu of a devotional this morning, will you please join me in a moment of silence? Members, we have one House bill for introduction today. House Bill 511 is an act relating to the admittance of federal immigration authorities into schools, introduced by Representative Greer of Bennington. Please listen to the first reading of the bill.
H 511, an act relating to the admittance of federal immigration authorities into schools.
Now the bill has been read the first time and is referred to the Committee on Judiciary. We have two bills on the notice calendar that carry an appropriation and therefore referred to the Committee on Appropriations pursuant to House Rule 35A. They are House Bill 248, which is an act relating to supplemental child care grants and the Child Care Financial Assistance Program, and Senate Bill 60, which is an act relating to establishing the Farm Security Special Fund to provide grants for farm losses due to weather conditions. Members, we've received three requests to read House concurrent resolutions that the House and Senate adopted pursuant to the consent calendar. The first is HCR 83, which is a House concurrent resolution congratulating the 2024 Green Mountain Council class of Eagle Scouts. Please listen to the reading of the resolution.
Whereas earning the rank of Eagle Scout is a special honor that only a small percentage of young persons enrolled in the Boy Scouts of America achieves. And whereas an Eagle Scout is an individual who exhibits a strong commitment to service and perseveres to reach this challenging goal. And whereas the following Scouts proudly achieved the rank of Eagle during 2024. Skylar Martinson, Colton Wild, Aiden Blanchard, Mason Shade, Shane Morse, Aiden Michael, Sean Plummer, Lincoln Hurley, John Mosier, Riley Beckett, Craig Buffard, Newt Boker, Benjamin Edwards, Riley Kilpatrick, Carl Laverty, Elliot Miklas, Aiden Powell, Spencer Levi, Xavier Richardson, Mark Stearns, Evan Cagle, Devin Schlegel Barber, Rose Broussard, Braden Apple, Micah Killam, Channing Roper, Rhett Gardner, William Kalluck, Nicholas Russell, Truman Bates, Nicholas Bushy, Zachary Bushy, Adam Kett, Henry Lawrence, Delaney LeBlanc, Liam Slaughterty, Jillian Koval, Oliver Bailey, Spencer Adams, Spencer Gibo, Zachary Norris, Gabriel Scribner, Aiden Hall, Mitchell Knowles, Warren Kingsbury, Oliver Anderson, Trevor Hazelton, Brendan Delaney, Joseph Donnerkill, Ethan Little, and Jaden Beardsley. And whereas all of these Scouts deserve commendation for their dedication and achievement. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives that the General Assembly congratulates the 2024 Green Mountain Council class of Eagle Scouts, and be it further resolved that the Secretary of State be directed to send a copy of this resolution to each Eagle Scout honored in this resolution and to the Green Mountain Council.
Next is HCR 92, which is a House concurrent resolution honoring the outstanding achievements of the federal TRIO programs in Vermont. Please listen to the reading of the resolution.
Whereas at 7 Vermont colleges and through the Vermont Student Assistance Corporation, students who aspire to be their family's first college graduate but lack the requisite funds can avail themselves of these federal educational support programs. And whereas in 1964 in the Equal Opportunity Act, Congress established Upward Bound, the original federal college incentive program for financially disadvantaged students. In the Higher Education Act of 1965, Congress created Talent Search to assist these students applying for newly established federal financial aid support. And in 1968, the 1965 law was amended to include the Special Services for Disadvantaged Students program, now known as Student Support Services. And together, these three services became commonly referred to as the federal TRIO programs. And whereas subsequent amendments to the 1965 legislation created the Educational Opportunity Centers and Veterans Upward Bound, and the Ronald E. McNair Post-Baccalaureate Achievement Program, and in 1990, the Upward Bound program created a new division, Upward Bound Math Science. And whereas in 1992, Congress officially renamed and combined these programs as the Federal TRIO programs, and they continue to be a special gateway for financially disadvantaged students to pursue their college dream. And whereas students and administrators representing the Federal TRIO programs in Vermont are visiting the State House today, Friday, April 25th, 2025, and their visit serves as an opportunity to recognize the educational and societal roles of the Federal TRIO programs. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives that the General Assembly honors the outstanding achievements of the Federal TRIO programs in Vermont, and be it further resolved that the Secretary of State be directed to send a copy of this resolution to the Board of Directors of the Vermont Educational Opportunity Programs.
And finally, HCR 101 is a House concurrent resolution congratulating Phoenix Newell on winning 2 consecutive Vermont State Spelling Bees. Please listen to the reading of the resolution.
Whereas spelling correctly is both an art and a science, requiring the knowledge of the English language's grammatical rules and the innumerable exceptions to every spelling convention. And whereas the challenge of spelling complex words correctly is tested in individual schools, states, and nationally through students' participation in the Scripps National Spelling Bee, a venerable scholastic tradition, and 2025 marks the competition's centennial. And whereas Phoenix Newell, a 7th grader at Riverside School in Lindenville, has for 2 consecutive years exhibited a passion and special talent for mastering the nuances of spelling a sophisticated lexicon of words. And whereas after innumerable hours of study and memorization, Phoenix Newell, then a 6th grader, advanced through numerous rounds of school competition to earn the opportunity to represent the Riverside School at the 2024 Vermont State Spelling Bee, at which she outspelled all the other contestants and was declared the champion. And whereas this singular achievement entitled Phoenix Newell to advance to the Scripps National Spelling Bee final in Washington, D.C. And despite her best efforts, Phoenix Newell was not recognized as the 2024 National Spelling Champion, but the excitement and thrill of being part of this nationwide contest motivated her to try again as a 7th grader. And whereas in 2025, Phoenix Newell's determination, patience, and academic stamina all contributed to her distinctive success in winning a 2nd consecutive Vermont State Spelling Bee. And she eagerly anticipates returning to our nation's capital for her 2nd appearance at the Scripps National Spelling Bee, this time as a more experienced contender. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives that the General Assembly congratulates Phoenix Newell on winning 2 consecutive Vermont State Spelling Bees, and be it further resolved that the Secretary of State be directed to send a copy of this resolution to Phoenix Newell.
Are there any announcements? Member from Calais.
Madam Speaker, it's with great pleasure that I introduce you and the House to one of Vermont's most important educational institutions, the Adult Education and Literacy Network. This is a group of providers that, for a stunningly low amount of state funds, works across the state to offer a broad range of educational services that change people's lives. They help new Americans learn English so they can enter the workforce. They help Vermonters obtain a high school diploma at any point in life to further their career goals, and they provide a wide variety of classes focused on everything from learning basic skills, such as reading and writing, to obtaining specialized career credentials. I personally have met many of these wonderful students, Madam Speaker. They're highly motivated individuals who go on to grow our workforce in critical areas, and many of them go on to matriculate at the Vermont State Colleges. Madam Speaker, adult education service providers, staff, and students are with us today in the gallery, and I would ask that you welcome them to the People's House.
Will the guest of the member from Calais please rise and be recognized? Member from Milton.
Madam Speaker, we just heard a resolution recognizing a remarkable group of young people in our state who have each earned the rank of Eagle Scout, the highest honor in scouting. This achievement is a testament to their dedication, leadership, and commitment to service. Earning the Eagle rank is no small task. Each of these scouts completed years of work, contributed hundreds of hours in community service, and successfully led others in meaningful projects that have made a lasting impact. They have upheld the values of the Scout Oath and Law, setting a strong example for their peers and for all of us. Our state is better for their service, and our future is in good hands with leaders like them. Please join me in recognizing and congratulating these outstanding young leaders. They are located in the balcony.
Will the guest of the member from Milton please rise and be recognized? Member from Linden.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We just heard of the resolution honoring federal TRIO programs in Vermont. There are 13 programs in Vermont supporting approximately 7,000 students and adults. These programs help low-income, first-generation, and disabled students meet their educational goals. TRIO representatives and students, including Sam, who is one of my students, are with us today. They are seated in the gallery behind me. Please join me in welcoming them to the People's House.
Will the guest of the member from Linden please rise and be recognized? Member from St. Johnsbury.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today, we heard a resolution recognizing Phoenix Newell, a standout student from Riverside School in Lyndonville, Vermont, who has twice conquered the Vermont State Spelling Bee with the precision of a seasoned wordsmith and the heart of a true champion. She is not only an expert speller, but Phoenix also inspires everyone around her with her hard work and determination. Today, we are honoring this remarkable seventh grader from Kirby, whose passion for spelling is matched only by her enthusiasm for excellence. Madam Speaker, please help me welcome Phoenix and her dad, Evan Newell, mom, Arceli Riaz, and her sibling, Cassius, to the People's House.
Will the guest of the member from St. Johnsbury please rise and be recognized? Member from Springfield.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to spend some time today, this morning, speaking a little bit about history. And it's history in terms of legislation that we quite often, or maybe not quite so often, work on in this General Assembly. Today is the 25th anniversary of the passage of our civil unions law back in the year of 2000. I'm one of the remaining members still here that was here during that time. We do have a resolution that has been drafted. It will appear next week in our concurrent resolution calendar. It did not come in at the right time. But, Madam Speaker, I'd like to say a few words of what occurred and to give a little bit of background on this. The House, 25 years ago today, concurred with the Senate amendments to a House bill, H. 847. And we sent the bill to Governor Howard Dean for his signature. And that occurred on April 26, 2000. What led up to that day was something that many of us had never really experienced in this House. And I want to start by reading a little bit of the court ruling that set the foundation for the discussion that occurred, and it occurred in our House Judiciary Committee, as well as within the halls of this building. Madam Speaker, on December 20th, 1999, the Vermont Supreme Court issued the landmark decision, Baker versus Vermont, holding that the exclusion of same-sex couples from access to the benefits and rights of marriage licenses under Vermont's law violated the Common Benefits Clause of the Vermont Constitution. The court allowed the General Assembly to consider and enact legislation consistent with the constitutional mandate described in its decision that could be civil marriage or a different legal status that delivered the common benefits and protections that flow from marriage under Vermont law. Based on this, starting in January of year 2000, our House Judiciary Committee started their work. They heard from many Vermonters, and some of those public hearings were tenuous at best. There was high security. There was tremendous emotions on both sides of the issue. But our committee listened to testimony from all sides and came to a unanimous solution of creating civil unions. And the term civil unions came out of our House Judiciary Committee room and the work of our colleagues. Madam Speaker, if it's allowable, I would like to quote from one particular floor speech that occurred that sums it up.
You may.
The vote was approaching and the chamber was packed with spectators when the vice chair of House Judiciary Committee, Representative Bill Lippert, the only openly gay lawmaker, rose to speak. He started his speech by saying, "I think it's important to put a face on this." The room fell silent. He continued, "I've had the privilege of developing a deep, devoted, loving, caring relationship with another man." Excuse me. I think it's very important as we listen, as we debate, as we make decisions, that you understand what the reality is about gay and lesbian people, gay and lesbian couples. Our lives in the midst of historic prejudice and historic discrimination are, to my view, in some ways, miracles. Think what kind of relationship you would try to establish, how successful it would be to find a loving, committed partner in an environment where you have been barraged on a daily basis from birth, saying you are sinful, you are wrong, something fundamentally flawed in your nature. Madam Speaker, we did pass that legislation, and we have some members here from the House Judiciary Committee at that time that I would like to introduce. We have the former member, the chair of the House Judiciary Committee, Representative Tom Little from Shelburne. We have the vice chair of the House Judiciary Committee at the time, Representative Bill Lippert from Heinsberg. And we also have with us a member of the committee, Representative Alice Nicka, as well as Senator Alice Nicka from Ludlow, and they're in the gallery. And please welcome them.
Will the guest, the member from Springfield, please rise and be recognized? Are there any further announcements? Member from Milton.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I was a JP when this law came in. I want to say in my community, there was only about 2 of us that celebrated all people. And I had friends calling me, Brenda, we would like to have our civil union. And of course, I was happy to do it. And I had a father call me and say, would you come to our house and perform or officiate my daughter's civil union? And I want to tell you all, it was a pleasure. And I was treated pretty rough in my community. I was treated like you do those things. People would make me cry because they thought I was doing something wrong. Even my minister was shocked I performed these duties. But I want to tell you, a lot of these people were my friends, my community members, and I was happy to be able to help them celebrate their special day.
Are there any further announcements? Member from St. Albans Town.
Madam Speaker, today is my favorite day of the year, not only because it's the start of the St. Albans Maple Festival, but I also have my beautiful family here with me. Sitting behind me in the gallery is my beautiful wife, Haley, who is expecting my 3rd child in July. And with her are my kids, Callan and Lucas. And they used to come here, I think, because they wanted to see Daddy work, but I think now they just want to see, or they just want to hear their names be introduced in front of everyone. So if you would please welcome my beautiful family to the People's House. Thank you.
Will the family of the member from St. Albans Town please rise and be recognized? Member from Waterbury.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would it be appropriate to ask for the remarks from the member from Springfield to be journalized?
Yes, the member from Waterbury moves that we journalize the remarks from the member from Springfield. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have journalized the remarks of the member from Springfield. Are there any further announcements? Member from Northfield.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It isn't often that I have family members show up at the State House, which is hard to believe, I know. But anyway, the group has already been introduced from Lindenville, and just like to welcome my 2 cousins, Kelly and Brianna, to the People's House. Kelly's last name is Duran. Her daughter is Ghostland. So welcome.
Will the family of the member from Northfield please rise and be recognized? Member from Newport City.
Madam Speaker, as you know, during my short time in appropriations, I remember that the committee would always begin the day with a riddle or some sort of joke. It was a nice start of the morning. And I thought that I would share with the body a brief joke, followed by a story about one of our members. If I may, Madam Speaker, may I continue?
You may.
Thank you. So here is the joke, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, why don't basketball players ever get invited to sophisticated parties?
Why?
Because they keep shooting the breeze. And here's the story of our member, Madam Speaker. The name of this person has been changed to protect the innocent member's identity. And any similarity to a person is, in real life, is purely accidental. The story begins with a young man named Jim. And Jim was known as the unluckiest player on his basketball team. Every time he'd shoot the ball, somehow it would find a way to hit the rim, the backboard, or even the referee, but never the net. And one day during a crucial game, Jim got the ball with just seconds left on the clock. The crowd went silent. His coach held his breath, and Jim shot. And as usual, it hit the rim, but this time it bounced back. It hit him on the head and went straight into the net. The crowd went wild, and from that day on, Jim was known as the headshot hero. Headshot Jim had big plans when he was younger of getting a basketball scholarship and playing basketball at Springfield College, which is where James Naismith in 1891 invented the game and where the Basketball Hall of Fame is located in Springfield, Mass. Unfortunately, that dream never happened. Somehow life got in the way, and Headshot went on to do other great things, such as serving his community, our state, and most importantly, refereeing our legislative basketball pool. If truth be known, Jim lives his dream silently of being a great basketball player through the legislative basketball pool. And in conclusion, Madam Speaker, I'd like to give another joke, if I may.
You may.
Madam Speaker, what do you call a basketball player who goes on a date?
What?
You call him a slam dunk charmer. And Madam Speaker, the member from Chittenden is our slam dunk charmer. He's a friend to all, and hopefully I'm still one of them. And I would ask the body to wish the member a very happy, happy birthday. Thank you.
Happy birthday, member. Are there any further announcements? Member from Essex.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to acknowledge what has, I was told not to move it around. I think as we've all heard, there have been some pretty tragic and disruptive detentions happening on our dairy farms. And if you wouldn't mind, Madam Speaker, may I read from a announcement, a press release?
You may.
Border Patrol recently detained 8 workers on a dairy farm in Franklin County, Vermont. Just 2 weeks earlier, federal agents stopped and detained community member Arve Lopez as he was on his way to the same farm. Arve is now held in detention and at risk of deportation. On April 9th, at 5 a.m., Border Patrol agents pulled over Abe as he was driving to deliver groceries to farm workers coming off their overnight shift. Agents threatened to break his car windows and ultimately pulled him out of his vehicle. Abe is a longtime member of the farm worker community in Vermont, a dedicated father, and a member of human rights organization Migrant Justice. Through Migrant Justice, Abe has been part of successful campaigns to expand access to driver's licenses, prevent police discrimination against immigrants, and launch the Milk with Dignity program. During the height of the first Milk with Dignity campaign, Abe led a historic 13-mile march to demand rights for farm workers. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Are there any further announcements? Seeing none, orders of the day. Members, will begin with Senate Bill 36, which is an act relating to the Medicaid payment model for residential substance use disorder treatment services. The bill was referred to the Committee on Human Services, which recommends that the House propose to the Senate that the bill be amended as printed in today's calendar. The member from Colchester, Representative Bishop, will speak for the committee. And carrying an appropriation, the bill was then referred to the Committee on Appropriations, which recommends that the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Human Services. The member from Burlington, Representative Bloomley, will speak for that committee. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
S36, an act relating to the Medicaid payment model for residential substance use disorder treatment services.
Member from Colchester.
Madam Speaker, on behalf of the Committee on Human Services, I present our report on S36 and a committee amendment to the bill. For anyone new to the State House, it quickly becomes clear just how broad and vital the work of Vermont's Agency of Human Services is. Given the scope and importance of its work, it's no surprise that the legislature must periodically and collaboratively provide input and oversight. S36 makes focused adjustments across three distinct areas of the agency's work. First, Medicaid coverage for residential treatment of substance use disorder and co-occurring mental health conditions. The second, services and supports for so-called public inebriates, a term we address in a subsequent amendment that I'll rise to speak about shortly. And the third, the appeals process before the Human Services Board. Let me walk you through these components. The Senate-passed version of S36 is available in the bill section of the House Human Services Committee's webpage, and the committee amendment that I will speak to appears on page 1678 of today's calendar. So the first component of the bill. As Vermont continues to face a severe substance use crisis, it's critical that treatment options, particularly residential treatment, are understood and coordinated to best serve Vermonters in need. Sections 1 and 2 of S36 make a clarification regarding Medicaid coverage for both high-intensity, medically monitored residential treatment and low-intensity, clinically managed residential treatment. These sections ensure that Medicaid beneficiaries with substance use disorder and co-occurring mental health conditions can access the care they need. A key point of clarification that this makes is that while an episode of care is initially authorized for 14 days, the bill makes clear that treatment coverage is not capped at 14 days. Instead, the full length of care deemed necessary by the medical provider must be covered by Medicaid. This ensures that medical judgment and not administrative confusion dictates the duration of treatment. Section 3 directs the Agency of Human Services to review the Medicaid payment model for these services and report back to the legislature by December 1st of this year. This review is intended to ensure that the payment structures align with the clinical needs of individuals receiving care and that there is coordination across different levels of residential care providers. The second component. So S36 also addresses how Vermont serves individuals who are incapacitated due to alcohol and/or substance use, historically referred to as public inebriates. Sections 4 and 5 of S36 address a provision in statute that would have prohibited the use of the Department of Corrections facilities to lodge incapacitated persons. And this would have gone into effect July 1st of this year. While well-intentioned, meant to prioritize specialized public inebriate programs, this prohibition on the use of the Department of Corrections facilities has been delayed multiple times due to the lack of available community-based beds. Rather than continue to delay implementation of a policy that cannot be supported with existing resources, S36 repeals the prohibition. This is necessary and pragmatic step occurs for two reasons. First, public inebriate program beds are insufficient to meet the statewide need for capacity, particularly in Chittenden County, where the need is the greatest and the impact is the greatest, yet no such beds exist, as is the case in some areas, other areas of the state as well. Second, and quite importantly, the stakeholders, including the Departments of Corrections, Mental Health and Health, law enforcement, medical staff, and public inebriate program operators themselves have expressed a shared view that while the Department of Corrections facilities are not the preferred first option, they must remain an option. We heard especially compelling testimony from emergency department nurses. In the absence of public inebriate beds, hospital emergency departments too often become the fallback location to lodge incapacitated persons, placing medical staff at risk and stretching already overwhelmed facilities. The use of emergency departments also increases the likelihood that an incapacitated person could be charged with a crime due to the potential aggressive actions in this inappropriate setting. Allowing the Department of Corrections use in limited, appropriate cases protects the medical providers and the incapacitated persons from the potential of criminal charges. It's important to emphasize, repealing the prohibition does not mean the state is shifting towards a preference for or greater reliance on the Department of Corrections facilities. On the contrary, the Agency of Human Services recognizes the need for these services and has committed to a 2-year plan to address the challenges facing our public inebriate program operations. In Section 6, through an instance of amendment, we direct the Agency of Human Services to prioritize where the work is needed most acutely and currently absent in Chittenden County. Secondly, we ask for a report on the overall progress of this plan and be brought to the Legislative Committee in a presentation by February 15th of 2026. And third, it requires the Department of Corrections to report by the same date on the efforts to connect incapacitated individuals with substance use recovery programs in the community, a practice that had existed but was disrupted by COVID-19. The final component of the bill deals with the Human Services Board, where Vermonters can appeal decisions made by Agency of Human Services regarding benefits and eligibility. These hearings are more formal than departmental reviews, yet most appellants appear pro se, meaning they represent themselves. In contrast, the agency is represented by in-house legal counsel or an assistant attorney general. As you might imagine, this can create a knowledge and power imbalance. We heard testimony about the challenges faced by unrepresented appellants, many of whom are unfamiliar with hearing procedures, legal objections, and what evidence is permissible to be introduced. It is this imbalance that S36 aims to address. By instance of amendment through Section 7, the bill requests the Agency of Human Services and the Human Services Board provide data, analysis, and recommendations to the legislature by December 15th of this year. These reports will help the legislature understand how to make the appeals process more equitable and accessible to Vermonters. Specifically, we are asking for proposals to ensure that attorneys representing the state can do so effectively while also recognizing the realities of being across the table from pro se appellants. We also ask for an analysis of how appeals are handled across the different Agency of Human Services departments and how that can improve consistency. We also ask for recommendations on how to make this process more user-friendly, such as using plain language, graphics, or videos to help prepare appellants for their hearings. The effective date of S36 and the instances of amendment will be July 1st of 2025. After passage, the title of the bill shall be amended so that it incorporates the three elements that we've just discussed. So as noted, S36 is a bill in three parts, each aimed at improving the delivery and accessibility of critical human services in Vermont. It ensures that those seeking residential substance use treatment can get the full care they need. It recognizes and seeks to improve how we address the available supports for incapacitated individuals and those in the community that encounter them, and takes steps to make appeals to the Human Services Board fairer and more transparent. I thank my colleagues on the committee for their thoughtful work. To accomplish this work, we heard from many witnesses, which I will now share. On the questions or the issues related to Medicaid, we heard from the bill reporter, Senate Committee on Health and Welfare, Legislative Counsel, Office of Legislative Counsel, Medicaid Director, Agency of Human Services. Regarding the public inebriate program, we heard from the Chief of Operations, Department of Corrections, Chief of Police, Colchester, Vermont, Chair, Governmental Affairs Committee, Vermont Emergency Nurse Association, the Vice President of Medical Staff, Rutland Regional Medical Center, Deputy Commissioner, Vermont Department of Health, Clinical Services Manager and State Opioid Treatment Authority, Vermont Department of Health, Commissioner, Department of Mental Health, Executive Director, Northeast Kingdom Human Services, Executive Director, Lamoille County Mental Health Services, Executive Director, Recovery House, Inc., Executive Director, Recovery Partners of Vermont, and a member of the Vermont House of Representatives. Concerning the Human Services Board component to the bill, we heard from the bill sponsor of H92. We heard from the Chair of the Human Services Board, the Chief Hearing Officer of the Human Services Board, parents and advocates for persons with developmental disabilities from Barrie, Vermont, the Executive Director of End Homelessness Vermont, Staff Attorney, Agency of Human Services, General Counsel, Department of Disability and Aging, Disabilities, Aging and Independent Living, General Counsel, Department of Children and Families, Staff Attorney, Vermont Legal Aid, Project Director, Disabilities Law Project, Vermont Legal Aid, Staff Attorney, Disabilities Law Project, Vermont Legal Aid. The bill, as amended, passed out of committee on the vote of 11-0. Your Committee on House Human Services respectfully requests your support of the bill.
And now speaking for the Committee on Appropriations, member from Burlington.
Madam Speaker, the Committee on Appropriations thanks the House Human Services Committee for its work on the bill. Sections 1 and 2 of the bill codify current practice as it relates to medically necessary residential treatment. Per JFO and the Agency of Human Services, there's no anticipated fiscal impact. House Appropriations approved the bill as amended by Senate Health and Welfare and further amended by House Human Services for passage on a vote of 11-0.
Now, the member from Colchester, Representative Bishop, and others offer an amendment to the report of the Committee on Human Services that is printed in today's calendar. Member from Colchester.
I'm back. Madam Speaker, I'll now speak to the committee amendment found on page 1680 of today's calendar. Following initial committee approval of S36 and the previously presented amendment, continued dialogue with our House colleagues led to a request to broaden the list of legislative committees that will receive the Department of Corrections report due in February of 2026. In response, we have included those additional recipients through a new instance of amendment in Section 6, subsection B. In this same amendment, we also propose a change in language to align with our commitment to respectful terminology. As this chamber has heard on prior occasions, your Committee on Human Services is committed to ensuring that the language used in our statutes supports Vermonters rather than stigmatizes them. Consistent with that goal, we recommend updating the language of S36, both in the underlying bill and in our prior amendment, by replacing the term inebriates with persons who are incapacitated. This modernization clarifies that the statute applies to individuals incapacitated by alcohol and/or other substances, which reflects current practice. This change appears in Section 4 of S36 and ensures consistency as well with the underlying statute's existing language, which refers to incapacitated rather than inebriated. Additionally, this respectful terminology will now appear in the revised title of Section 6. It will appear in Sections 6A1, A2, and B, and as well as the title of the bill as amended upon passage. The Committee on Human Services was unanimous in its support of this amendment, voting 11-0.
The question is, shall the report of the Committee on Human Services be amended as offered by the member from Colchester and others? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have amended the report of the Committee on Human Services. Now the question is, shall the House propose to the Senate to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Human Services as amended? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have proposed to the Senate to amend the bill. Now the member from Burlington, Representative Rachelson, offers an amendment to the House proposal of amendment that is printed in today's calendar. Member from Burlington.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First, I'd like to thank the Human Services Committee for their diligent work on S36 and for their patience in having me in to talk about my amendment. It's clear we all want what's best for Vermonters. Before I explain what my amendment does and what my rationale is for each section of the amendment, let me say why I decided to propose an amendment, which is something I've rarely done and is very much out of my comfort zone. When a portion of S36 initially came to the House Judiciary Committee, my interest was piqued. I decided to do more in-depth research. As a citizen legislature, we each bring our unique work experiences. Mine happen to include running a designated agency outpatient mental health and substance abuse department and running a statewide organization that provides residential and outpatient treatment. Last year, my neighbor, who works in law enforcement, contacted me and asked me what happened to Act One, our local public inebriate program. He said that now they were spending over 2 hours taking inebriates up to jail in Highgate. Knowing the incredible financial strain that the program had been experiencing, I was not surprised. Most people with drug or alcohol intoxication require neither a criminal response or the level of critical care offered by emergency departments of hospitals. Yet these are the two places that most people end up. Big picture, my amendment generally aims to do a few things. One, use our expensive and important state resources wisely. Law enforcement, correctional facilities, and hospitals. We do this by making sure that we do not use jails as a convenient dumping ground for holding people who are merely incapacitated, and that hospitals not become the default drunk tank. These are not the only two options. For years, programs like Act One, ASAP, and others have been providing a successful service to a great majority of the people who are what we have called public inebriates. Nationally, many reputable studies have shown that what we call public inebriate programs, or PIPs, other states have called sobering centers. Their work has successfully reduced jail admissions. An NIH study showed the use of these inebriate programs reduced jail admissions by up to 95%. Seen as a promising public health intervention, these programs have been called a successful alternative to not only jail, but also a cost-effective alternative to emergency departments in many states by relieving overuse of emergency services. An NIH study found that nationally, emergency departments visits for alcohol intoxication increased by 51.5% between 2006 and 2014. The increases in patient volume in an already strained emergency response system not only leads to emergency department overcrowding, but also negatively affects the quality of care, patient safety, and overall experience for both patients and staff alike. This NIH study also found that emergency department visits due to substance use disorders and public intoxication and their associated costs are largely avoidable if the disorder is adequately treated. and if patients have an alternative place to gain sobriety. The director of the Moyle County program stated in a 2023 article in Vermont Digger that 70% of the people brought to their program were willing to accept referrals to a treatment program. This amendment does not eliminate the use of jail when it is needed, but it does put some guardrails in place. The amendment is consistent with important legislation this body has passed based on evidence and research. In 1978, this body passed the Vermont Alcohol Services Act. The act decriminalized public intoxication and established a program to move public inebriates into treatment rather than being charged or jailed. The American Medical Association in 1956 and the American Bar Association in 1975 stated that alcoholism and public intoxication are diseases. Madam Speaker, may I quote a 1980 article from the Department of Justice?
You may.
Thank you. The article entitled Public Inebriate, Overview and Alternatives to Jail, a report from the First National Conference on the Public Inebriate. Although public inebriacy remains a national problem, costing millions of dollars annually, it has been given low priority by all levels of government and by the alcoholism treatment community. The practice of jailing public inebriates should be ended, and a more rational, effective grassroots program for their care should be developed. The article goes on to say, jailing of public inebriates is time-consuming, costly, and ineffective in deterring public intoxication. If one looks at the chapter that this bill is in, it's chapter 18, it's Title 18, Chapter 94, and the declaration of the policy is very clear about not treating people with alcohol or inebriation as criminals. So let me now explain my amendments. My first instance of amendment strikes out the repeal provision and instead replaces it with a 2-year sunset that would end on July 1st, 2027. I realize this has been done numerous times since 2007, but let me state why I'm doing this. To merely strike the vision and important goal of keeping inebriates out of jail flies in the face of the Vermont's Declaration of Policy in Chapter 94, Substance Use Disorders. Have we extended the policy way too many times? Yes. But rather than do what is the prudent, cost-effective, and most effective action to fund public inebriate programs, S36 chooses to erase the commitment. The next two instances of amendment are all about putting guardrails and definition to when someone would be eligible or appropriate to be taken to jail. So Section 5, treatment and services, I've added the language, and who poses a risk to public safety to this sentence. A person judged by a law enforcement officer to be incapacitated, who has been charged with a crime, and who poses a risk to public safety may be lodged in protective custody in a lockup or community correction center for up to 24 hours or until judged by the person in charge of the facility to be no longer incapacitated. My rationale is as follows. Being incapacitated in itself is not a crime, and putting into permanent law merely that someone who is incapacitated, in my opinion, is too broad and opens the possibility that many people could end up being taken to jail. Let us not confuse drunk or drugged and disorderly with merely drunk or drugged. Absolutely, it is important to have people who are a danger to public safety be able to go to jail. And it's critical that we be crystal clear in our legislative intent that every public inebriate should not be jailed. Remember, people who are brought to jail under the provision currently do not go before a judge. The provision allows them to go voluntarily. You've got the question of how voluntary is it in some circumstances if we're saying the person is incapacitated? How are they capable of giving their consent? Don't we have to be extra careful about who we are allowing this to happen to? Why? As a nation, we have made progress recognizing that alcohol and other drug misuse are health issues. And unless a law was broken, such as driving under the influence or underage use, it's not necessarily a criminal justice issue. Sorry. Apologies for that. So the next, sorry, I am so sorry, Madam Speaker. And our corrections budget is big and our resources are not endless. As it is, we send 140 people out of state to an expensive prison because we cannot house everyone here in Vermont. Let us not create a law that would put more demand on this expensive system than we need to. The second condition is that there is not an approved program with detoxification capabilities or a licensed general hospital within a 60-mile radius of where the person will be encountered, who will be accepted for treatment. So first, if someone is a risk of being violent or dangerous, the medical facility, ER, or detoxification public inebriate program still has the ability not to accept them. Secondly, the instance of amendment that adds a 60-mile radius. We currently have law enforcement driving up to 60 miles or more to take someone to jail who is incapacitated. Why wouldn't we want to at least drive the same amount to get them to a more appropriate and effective destination? The next two instances of amendment are targeted to address two very real issues that I've heard about from many people in my district and has been mentioned in at least one news article. When someone is taken by law enforcement to a jail, the law enforcement officers bring the person's cell phone, ID, wallet, and other belongings on their person back to their barracks or station. When the person is released from jail, they have no phone, no wallet, no money. They are often far from home or where they were picked up. In one instance, the person was from out of town, a tourist from Stowe that was visiting Stowe, who got released from jail in St. Johnsbury. How do we expect people to get back without money, contact information, etc.? My instances of amendment are that any personal belongings taken from the person will be promptly returned to the person upon release, and that the person shall be returned to the location the person was first encountered or other reasonable location if it's requested. Remember, these people didn't break the law, and they have been transported away from their community or where they started and do not have a way back or a way to collect their personal belongings. And the last instance of amendment is to put more teeth into the report requirement. It says the Department of Health and Mental Health's existing plan to expand services and programming for persons who are incapacitated pursuant to 18 VSA 4810 shall first prioritize the county with the highest current use of correctional facilities for the purpose, and then any other underserved region of the state. As part of the department's fiscal year 27 budget presentations, the department shall include a proposal for expanding community-based services for people who are incapacitated to underserved regions of the state, using in part cost savings from diverting persons who are incapacitated, who are from emergency departments and correctional facilities. In order to understand why, I want to quickly walk you through the chronology of the Public Inebriate Program. In 2007, there was a study of the Public Inebriate Summer Study Committee. Some of their charges included recommending changes to the statutes, reviewing the policies and practices, and that by January 15, 2008, there would be a recommendation made in terms of services that were needed. In 2008, the legislature set up a task force, and the task force was supposed to report back to the legislature's appropriations departments no later than January 2010 to ensure that public inebriates are given appropriate care rather than incarcerated. The plan was supposed to look at regional availability of services that could go into effect by January 2011. In 2010, there was a very thorough public inebriate task force report that is if we put the date 2025 on it, it would be incredibly relevant for today. They identified every issue that we're currently looking at. We're underfunding our current public inebriate programs. And as a result, we're overusing emergency rooms and jails. That we need a coherent statewide system of care put into place. They suggested putting guardrails on who gets jailed, very similar to ones that I am proposing in this amendment. There was another report in 2014. There was another extension. We keep not doing what we know works and will save money, will have better outcomes. In addition to providing an important intervention and connection to treatment and recovery, we know that public inebriate programs are intended to divert individuals from these high-cost resources. So I'd like to just end with reading another quote, if that's possible, Madam Speaker, from the Public Inebriate Study of 1980.
You may.
All communities should have programs to serve the public inebriate. Intervention in the life of the inebriate is appropriate where there is a threat to life. Solutions to the problem will require cooperation among many constituencies. All levels of government have the responsibility to commit funds towards solving the problem. Detoxification alone is not the complete solution. A range of services must be provided. Most states have failed to consider the cost savings to the criminal justice system that would result from addressing the need effectively. Madam Speaker, I ask the body for their support and again, thank the committee for having me in.
Member from Colchester.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Your Committee on Human Services has voted unfavorably on the amendment offered by the member from Burlington. The committee appreciated the member's thoughtful testimony and the depth of her engagement on this issue. She brought meaningful insights and a strong commitment to the well-being of vulnerable Vermonters. However, over the course of our deliberations, we heard from 11 witnesses on the issue of lodging incapacitated individuals, including medical and nursing staff who expressed grave concerns about the safety and appropriateness of hospital emergency departments being used in this way, and they would, by default, ultimately be used more frequently. Their testimony emphasized the potential of harm to staff, other patients, and the incapacitated individual when emergency rooms are used to retain individuals with no medical need. We also heard from state officials and community service providers, including current providers of public inebriate programs, who shared that in certain situations, temporarily holding a person in protective custody, it's important to note this is protective custody. As the member noted, an individual, even if lodged in a DOC facility, is not arrested, they are not booked. But holding a person in protective custody in a correctional facility remains a necessary option now and into the future. Thus, we decided that a repeal rather than a delay was appropriate. The committee is concerned that the language in the proposed amendment would restrict the ability to utilize the Department of Corrections in support of the community-based public inebriate programs themselves, and in those areas that do not currently have public inebriate program services and will unintentionally lead to more individuals being held in emergency departments. Madam Speaker, if I may I refer to two quotes, please?
You may.
The first is from the Vice President of Medical Staff at Rutland Regional Medical Center, and I quote, "Our hospitals are working hard to protect staff. Nonetheless, our staff and sometimes other patients continue to be struck, spit on, shoved, and verbally assaulted. Agitated and uncooperative, intoxicated individuals with no medical needs are a danger to staff and prevent us from caring for your loved ones. If the police have determined that these individuals are unsafe in the community, then the police should have the option to keep them safe, warm, and dry for the hours it will take to regain capacity. If the only option you give police is to bring these individuals to the emergency department, you'll be endangering staff and other patients." And the second quote is from the Executive Director of Recovery House, who is also an operator of a public inebriate program. "By prohibiting inebriated individuals from being placed in correctional facilities, the likelihood of hospitalization increases. There should remain a multi-option approach by including public inebriate beds, hospitals, and correctional facilities, the system can respond to the specific needs of the individual or the situation. An option reduction will almost certainly lead to an inappropriate placements for some individuals, end quote. These perspectives underscore why your Committee on Human Services supports a cautious, multifaceted approach and believes the repeal aligns with both public safety and compassionate care. I would also just want to circle back and emphasize that we would agree, as all do, that the best practice is, when possible, the use of public inebriate programs. And that's why we were pleased to hear about the 2-year, 2-phase plan of the Department of Mental Health to build out greater capacity for public inebriate programs. But as reflected in the testimony we've received and to which I've referred, there are still needs that all who testified agreed. There are still needs on occasions where lodging at Department of Corrections is the appropriate and needed option. So, Madam Speaker, again, your committee vote was unfavorable on the amendment by a vote of 281.
The question is, shall the House amend its proposal of amendment as offered by the member from Burlington? Are you ready for the question? Member from Burlington.
Madam Speaker, I will begin not with a riddle, but a fill in the blank. The only tool you keep in your toolbox, then everything that needs fixing starts to look like a nail. My guess is that most in this chamber completed that sentence before I did, one, because I put a pause in there, but also because it's a well-utilized analogy that reminds us that different problems require a multitude of tools. Similarly, if the only institution we continue to invest in is a prison, then everything we need to fix starts to look like a crime. But in Vermont, as stated by the representative from Burlington, public intoxication is not a crime. Madam Speaker, may I cite Title 8, the underlying statute referred to by my colleague from Burlington?
You may.
This is Title 18, Chapter 94, Section 4801. It starts with A. It is the policy of the state of Vermont that alcoholism and alcohol abuse are correctly perceived as health and social problems rather than criminal transgressions against the welfare and morals of the public. Goes to B. The General Assembly therefore declares that 1. Alcoholics and alcohol abusers shall no longer be subjected to criminal prosecution solely because of their consumption of alcoholic beverages or other behavior related to consumption, this is important, that is not directly injurious to the welfare of property or the public. And 2, alcoholics and alcohol abusers shall be treated as persons with the condition of alcoholism and shall be provided adequate and appropriate medical and other humane rehabilitative services congruent with their needs. Madam Speaker, this body wrote that more than a decade ago. Yet today, S36 proposes to permanently repeal the prohibition on housing incapacitated individuals in correctional facilities, a prohibition this body has repeatedly reaffirmed, even if only temporarily in 2-year intervals. We're not just changing a policy here. We are erasing a principle. Two principles, that addiction is not a crime and that prisons are not treatment centers. I want to point out that this amendment provides a more thoughtful alternative, one that recognizes the uncomfortable reality that we are in with the absence of sufficient supportive services. If the state is going to continue to place people who have not committed a crime and have not been arrested into a correctional facility, then it is entirely reasonable to set guardrails. It is reasonable to keep their personal property accessible so that they can make a phone call or access their wallet upon release. And if we've transported them miles away from the place where they were intercepted, it is reasonable to return them to that place, not to leave them disoriented and stranded literally at the prison gates. And while I appreciate that the Department of Corrections has acted in good faith in their agreement to continue housing incapacitated Vermonters, I also want to remind this body of something the Commissioner has stated repeatedly, again and again, in our committee, Corrections and Institutions. This is something that we all know to be true. When we underfund social services, the only doors that remain open are emergency departments and jail cells, or the streets. That is the genesis of this completely unnecessary debate between advocates for the nurses and the emergency department staff and for our correctional officers. And let's be clear, these are the very same jail cells we've been discussing in relation to ICE detainees. As of this morning, the Department of Corrections is housing 26 ICE detainees. Those include the recently arrested migrant farm workers. It was 23 yesterday. It was 27 the day before. The 2024 average for ICE detainees, daily ICE detainees, is 8. We have already doubled that in 2025. The number is rising, and that rise is alarming in its consistency. And the impact on our understaffed and overworked correctional officers is absolutely unsustainable. Just this week, the Working Vermonters Caucus heard about a CEO that was recently forced to work 11 16-hour shifts in a row. Once again, DOC is being asked to solve the problems we create when we choose to warehouse people in need of care, rather than invest in the systems that would actually meet their needs. But instead of building out the services we've promised, services that align with our laws and our stated values, we are removing the guardrails that prevent us from defaulting back to incarceration. This is not a new pattern, and it mirrors what we've seen recently with Raise the Age legislation, another law that was passed, signed, and still implementation is met with shrugged shoulders, we can't do that, and delay by the administration. Then, this body quietly accommodates without any pushback. I urge us not to reinforce that pattern or repeat that cycle here today. If we are not yet ready to fulfill the promise we made to provide real alternatives for those struggling with substance use, then let's say so plainly, but let's also continue the sunset on the prohibition for a limited time. Let's not pretend that removing it altogether is any sort of step forward. This is a health issue. It should be met with care, not a cell. I'll be supporting this amendment, and I hope that the body will join me.
The question is, shall the House amend its proposal of amendment as offered by the member from Burlington, member from Bristol?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Nurses, social workers, and other health care providers should not be used as leverage. They should not bear the consequences of state inaction. In addition, our hospitals have been asked to shoulder more and more of our healthcare system, which would be far more appropriately addressed in community services and locations. We know that hospitals are already at their breaking point. Madam Speaker, may I quote AFT Vermont?
You may.
AFT Vermont is a labor union representing thousands of healthcare professionals, among others, including many emergency department staff at UVM Medical Center, Porter Medical Center, Central Vermont Medical Center, Northwestern Medical Center, and Brattleboro Memorial Hospital. We are concerned that the amendment to S36 would increase pressure on our already overburdened emergency departments, fueling the epidemic of workplace violence and accelerating burnout in our profession. We are clear that bringing incapacitated individuals to our correctional facilities is also not the answer. What this illuminates, however, is a system in need of structural overhaul. We cannot allow our nurses and healthcare workers to serve as a shock absorber for a failing system. Madam Speaker, may I quote also the Director of Government Affairs of the Vermont Emergency Nurse Association?
You may.
Should that shift of placement of these individuals under the influence be directed at the emergency departments, considering its current state of overcrowding, violence, and lack of referral resources, that would be what broke the system for us in the emergency departments. It would directly increase workplace violence, as those patients are often uncooperative and do not want to be in protective custody. It would also be another strain on the emergency department's resources, as intoxicated individuals have no medical reason to be in the emergency department unless they're being treated for severe alcohol intoxication, withdrawal, or another different medical issue. In addition, it's not financially responsible for a healthcare system that's already at its breaking point. Those patients, once medically clear, will not have services that are billable, but will continue to take up internal resources and alter the ability of the emergency departments to care for other patients. Lastly, it will significantly increase liability of the providers and hospitals that are essentially now providing protective custody, as again, these patients are often non-compliant or safe and will yet again be put into a position where we have to navigate the gray zone on how to keep a patient safe in our custody that poses a risk to themselves and others in the ED, who are those people who are already in vulnerable states of trauma or illness. End of quote. In addition, legislators shouldn't be creating arbitrary categories in statute about which incapacitated person is safe to send to the already mightily struggling EDs. The nature of being under the influence is unpredictable and individual. And individuals under the influence can and have exhibited violent behavior when they haven't previously. A piece of legislation cannot make that distinction on a case-by-case basis. If individuals under the influence of a substance, with or without substance or alcohol use disorder, do need medical care, of course, they should be treated and are treated as appropriate in the hospital. People with any kind of substance use disorder deserve compassionate care in appropriate settings, as do people without a disorder but who are incapacitated by a substance. This amendment does not provide this. It shifts a glaring service gap from one inappropriate setting to another. We have the power to create such safe settings, and indeed have done so in the past, such as the defunded Act 1 in Chittenden County, which provided a safe and supervised environment for individuals who are incapacitated and don't need medical care until they can regain sobriety. Madam Speaker, for these reasons, I oppose this amendment and ask that you vote no. Yes, let's recreate community-based services. Let's fix the problem with a strong bill addressing everything mentioned today, not this amendment, instead of shifting it onto a system already experiencing significant moral injury, physical and psychological injury, and potential collapse. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question is, shall the House amend its proposal of amendment as offered by the member from Burlington? Are you ready for the question? Member from Waterbury.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to rise to make sure that the body is clear that your House Human Services Committee is not promoting the use of correctional facilities for people who are incapacitated. And rather, we are promoting the continued development or reestablishment of community-based programs. I do want to point out that in the presentations by the relevant departments, that one, they're working together, which was good to see, but two, that it is not only a plan, but there are resources in the governor's budget for FY26 to reestablish public inebriate programs. The plan did not include the highest volume location, which is in Chittenden County. And so that is why one of the amendments from your House Human Services Committee asked them to prioritize Chittenden County because that is where the highest volume of the use of correctional facilities has happened, and where people are taken to St. Albans primarily for that facility. And so we recognize and fully support the use of community-based services, and we felt that not only given a plan, but resources devoted to that plan in the budget that was presented and approved by this body, and hopefully will be again later on, that we felt comfortable with this, especially identifying the fact that current public and NABIA programs identified that in certain situations where somebody becomes too aggressive for them to be able to handle in a community-based program, that they still will need the support of a correctional facility. So I just want to point that out, and to indicate also that there were 2 in favor, 8 opposed, and 1 absent on this vote. Thank you.
The question is, shall the House amend its proposal of amendment as offered by the member from Burlington? Member from Burlington.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to move that we divide the question and vote separately on what is Section 4 in the amendment. This is the sunset portion of the amendment, and then the rest of that, which would keep us with the ability to talk about the guardrails separately.
Will the House please come to order? Member from Burlington, it is divisible, so we will start with Section 4 for a vote, and then the following vote will be on the remainder of sections. So the question is, shall the House amend its proposal of amendment as offered by the member from Burlington in Section 4? Are you ready for the question? Member from Waterbury.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to be clear to the body that the House Committee on Human Services vote was in opposition to the whole amendment. So as divided, it would still remain opposed to either section. Thank you.
The question is, shall the House amend its proposal of amendment as offered by the member from Burlington in Section 4? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Nay. The nays appear to have it. The nays do have it, and you have declined to amend the House proposal of amendment in Section 4. Now the question is, shall the House amend its proposal of amendment as offered by the member from Burlington in the remainder of sections of the amendment? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Nay. The nays appear to have it. The nays do have it, and you have declined to amend the House proposal of amendment. Now the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and third reading is ordered. Next is House Bill 364, which is an act relating to approval of the annexation of property by the Village of Swanton. The bill was referred to the Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs, which recommends that the bill ought to pass. The member from Berkshire, Representative Hangle, will speak for the committee. Materially affecting the revenue of one or more municipalities, the bill was then referred to the Committee on Ways and Means, which also recommends that the bill ought to pass. The member from Lowell, Representative Higley, will speak for that committee. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
H 364, an act relating to approval of the annexation of property by the Village of Swanton.
Member from Berkshire.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. H364 came to your Government Operations and Military Affairs Committee from the village and town of Swanton in Franklin County. The Village of Swanton offices have occupied their current location since the early 1980s, and they have since outgrown their space. There is a parcel of unused land across the road that borders the side of their property that belongs to the town. Both the Village Board of Trustees in September of 2023 and April of 2025, and the Town Select Board in April of 2025 have approved this annexation. The village charter requires approval by the legislature to annex property, so we ask you today for your approval. The purpose of this annexation is to move the village electric department, currently housed in the existing municipal building, to a new complex across the street. As a result of this move, the village police department will be able to expand its operations in their existing location, which is at capacity. A positive outcome of this annexation will be that the village police force has the potential to further expand their services to include contracting with the town to provide public safety coverage, which it has already begun to do within the confines of their available space. The village will hold a bond vote on May 6th to request approval from the voters, and an affirmative vote of this body will provide confidence to the voters that the village can move forward with that bond. Your House Committee asks that you support the committee's vote of approval on a 10-0-1 vote. We heard from the sponsors of the bill, Legislative Council, Office of Legislative Counsel, the Swanton Village Manager, and the Swanton Town Administrator. Thank you.
And now for the Committee on Ways and Means, member from Lowell.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, your Committee on Ways and Means has considered this annexation of property from the town of Swanton to the village of Swanton, and after hearing from Legislative Counsel that this annexation will not have any impact on the revenues of the state of Vermont, the committee approves the passage of H364 on a vote of 11-0-0. We heard from the presenter of the bill from Government Operations and Military Affairs, as well as Legislative Counsel. Thank you.
The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and third reading is ordered. The final bill on our action calendar today is House Bill 398, which is an act relating to the Vermont Economic Development Authority. Member from Whitingham.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Your Committee on Commerce and Economic Development moves to delay action on this bill for one legislative day.
The member from Whitingham moves that we postpone action on House Bill 398 for one legislative day. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have postponed action on House Bill 398 for one legislative day. Members, that completes the orders of the day. Are there any announcements? Member from Chittenden.
Madam Speaker, it's that time of year when we get to participate in the end of session ritual, the annual adjournment pool. And unlike March Madness that might have been referred to earlier, you can enter as many times as you like. Entries are just $2 each or 3 for $5. The more you enter, the better your odds of winning. Proceeds this year will benefit the Vermont Food Bank. Please visit Chris in the House Clerk's office to enter, and enter often. And finally, please try to be a little bit more optimistic on your date and time picks. And not like the member from Newport last year, who selected a date well past the scheduled end of the session to the point that he was called out in the media and in some circles as Representative Downer. Thank you.
Are there any further announcements? Will the House please come to order? Member from Middlebury.
Madam Speaker, the member from Newport may have beat me to the punch, but the House Appropriations Committee is going to have the last word on this. You've already heard that a member of our committee has a birthday today. When I asked committee members what I should say about this member, the first thing one person said was, "There are so many directions you could go with this." Another member suggested I say, "This member loves a good joke. Sadly, he doesn't know any." Then we can also discuss the fact that this member is still talking about the NCAA basketball tournament and who did better or worse than he did when people come in to testify. Maybe that's why some folks are reluctant to come to our committee these days. Regardless, I do appreciate this member for many things, including his willingness to work hard and work collaboratively, the fact that he cares greatly about the work we do in committee and in this body, the Jones Donuts he sometimes brings to committee, and his perpetual sense of humor. Now that, Madam Chair, is a really big deal. Please join me in wishing the member from Chittenden a very happy birthday. Thank you.
Happy birthday, member. Member from Newport City. Will the House please come to order?
Madam Speaker, I feel I have to respond to the member from Chittenden regarding his comments related to my picking the end of our legislative time together. And yes, it's true, I did select a date that was a little off course, but that is because I have so many friends here and I wanted to spend more time with all of you, including the member from Chittenden. Thank you, member.
Are there any further announcements? Member from Williston.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Hard act to follow, but maybe you've heard there's a hot new spring break destination. It is Montpelier. This afternoon, we have a joint hearing between the House and Senate Education Committees to hear from students across the state about the future of education as we consider and debate their future here and certainly want to make much more room for their voices. We are thrilled to have over 30 students signed up, some coming in person, some on Zoom, some sending testimony. The signups continue to pour in, and we hope perhaps to even offer a second opportunity like this. So if you want to hear from students directly, please join us anytime between 1 and 3 this afternoon in room 11 with the House Education and Senate Education Committees.
Are there any further announcements? The chair has 2 for you. Today at noon is the deadline to submit drafting requests for House concurrent resolutions to Michael Chernick in the Office of Legislative Counsel. Secondly, at the end of announcements today, I will be asking the member from Poultney for a motion to adjourn until Monday for a token session to move our calendar along. Members do not need to attend a token session. The House will meet again as it normally does on Tuesday at 10 a.m. Are there any further announcements? Seeing none, member from Poultney, can you please offer us a motion to adjourn until Monday, April 28th at 3 p.m.?
Madam Speaker, I make a motion this body stand in adjournment until Monday, April 28th, 2025 at 3 p.m.
You have heard the motion. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and this body stands in adjournment until Monday at 3 p.m.